All right, so this is our sixth video in this series, Torah in the Ancient Israelite Context, which is derived from Dr. John H. Walton and J. Harvey Walton's The Lost World of the Torah. I'm basically explaining and illustrating different things about and talking about what this book is teaching as a way of helping other folks understand this topic. So, previously, we've talked about the Torah being ancient. We've talked about the difference between law in the modern world versus the ancient world. And we've talked about the Torah being a suzerainty treaty, a treaty between God as king and Israel as the vassal. And then we talked last time about holiness being something conferred, given, designated by God, not something earned. Now we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about ancient Near Eastern rituals, because this is one area where the Torah and the Israelites and their relationship with God is pretty strongly contrasted in one key area between that and their neighbors. So we need to first understand what did their neighbors think, right? What was the understanding in the ancient Near East of ritual? Why did they do it? What was its goal? What was its purpose? Let's dig in. So here's the first key point. Evidence is ample, and there's a wide consensus among scholars that the ancient Near East cultic ritual system was designed to meet the needs of the gods. All right, so that's our starting point, right? That all of the different rituals, right? Everything that they were doing in the systems, the priests and the people in Babylon, in Egypt, in Greece, everywhere, was designed to make the gods happy, to meet their needs, and to serve them. Okay, let's see what that means. The premise was that initially the gods had created the cosmos for themselves and to fulfill their desires. They were quite content without people and had no plans to include such creatures. Nevertheless, the gods had needs for food, housing, and clothing, just as humans do. Eventually, the gods tired of all the labor required to ensure their survival and provide the accustomed amenities that would make their existence pleasurable. Various stories circulated about how the problem finally came to a tipping point, but the upshot was that the gods decided to create people as servants to supply their needs. So this is a key understanding of the difference between the creation story in the Bible, right, and the stories common throughout the ancient Near East. People are an afterthought in those stories. They're not part of the original plan. They're not part of the original purpose. They were created to fulfill a role, which is to serve the gods and keep them from having to work all the time. Again, that was what they came up with. Why are we here, right? It's not a very uplifting idea, but that was what was commonly understood throughout the ancient Near East. This is my particular contribution, right? The sci-fi thing. Dr. Walton didn't talk about that, but it pops into my head quite clearly. So this premise from the ancient Near East has a kindred parallel in science fiction, right? In many of those stories, humanity creates robots or AI to release us from work. You do all the stuff we don't want to do. In science fiction, the needs of the robots are not contemplated. Nobody cares, right? They don't have feelings. They're not people. So who cares? Treat them however you want. And of course, it being sci-fi, sometimes that goes really wrong when they, rise up against us and all of that thing. And of course, the bottom is the picture from WALL-E of the people that are just being completely cared for by the robots. I thought that was as good a illustration of what Walton is saying, that the ancient Near East thought that basically the gods were the not well off people on the ship there, and people were the robots doing all the work for them. So that's the parallel, if it helps you understand what he's trying to say. So for this system to work, however, it could not be just a one-way street. If people were going to meet the gods' needs successfully, effectively, continually, the gods would have to ensure the people had enough rain to grow food, the crops would grow and the animals were fertile, and that the people were protected from invasion or other sorts of disaster. Dead or destitute people could not provide for the gods. The status quo then was a codependence built from mutual need. This is a important point. Again, in the next section, in video 7, we're going to contrast that very strongly with God's role, God's relationship with Israel. So why did the gods care if people had a good harvest, if their animals were healthy, if they were secure from invasion and disease and stuff? Why did they care? Because that's how they provided for them. Again, if these serfs, these peons, again, you can think of it like the feudal system in medieval Europe, right? The lord, the duke, the earl, the count, whoever he is, he can't live in that castle and do what he wants to do if his peasants don't pay him any taxes. All right, and so the gods cared about people because people provided for them, and so they gave the people, at least the people thought they were getting these, of course, from these idols and whatnot. So they certainly weren't, but they thought they were, so that they could live, right, to continue to give to them, and so it became a codependency. Walton calls it the great symbiosis. And of course, we see this in nature. I picked 2 pictures illustrating a symbiotic relationship. There are many such examples in the natural world. The symbiotic relationship that framed the life, religious thinking, rituals, and theology of the ancient world. The main focus of this symbiotic relationship was the temple. Such temples were considered the control center of the cosmos, and from there the god maintained order, sustained by the rituals of the people. All right, so the central focus of the temple, because that's where the god directed things from. So the people came to the temple with their offerings, with their rituals, in order to continue the relationship. All right, well understood. That's why temples were so important and so lavished upon with of course, all of the time and care it took to build them. And so much of their economy, so much of their life revolved around things connected to the temple. Requirements for purity were exacting because the people didn't want the gods to feel offended in any way, though unfortunately it was not always clear how the gods' favor could be sustained or what might offend them. Again, we've already mentioned this, I believe it was in the last video, that God, in Torah, made himself understood in this area. These are the things you must do. These are the things you cannot do, and I will bless you. And right, blessings and curses. God laid it out for them. Notoriously, in the other ancient Near Eastern religions, you didn't know what gods wanted from one moment to the next. They could change. They could suddenly be displeased with something that you thought they were pleased with before. So it was a pretty iffy thing. So they took ritualistic purity, doing these things the right time, the right place, the right way. They took it very seriously because they were afraid. Right? This is a hard to please boss that you never know who he's going to yell at. You never know who's going to get fired. Right? And so everyone in the workplace is on pins and needles. That's basically what's going on here. They are just trying to not make the gods mad. But unfortunately, they don't necessarily know what that's going to look like. So in the great symbiosis then, rituals provided the means by which order could be maintained. Legal texts and ritual texts occupied overlapping conceptual territory. Both were strategies to ensure order and the favor of the gods. This is something we're going to need to wrap our heads around because it's not the way our world works. It's not the way the Western postmodern world that we live in works. Legal issues and religious ritual issues overlap because they're trying to do the same thing in their own way. Order and the favor of the gods, right? We're going to dig into this a little bit more, but that's something that is not necessarily easy for us. Again, it makes all the sense in the world if you are living in a fundamentalist Muslim country, right? Where that is a theocracy like Iran is, where the religious leaders are making all of the decisions for life because all of it is revolving around the relationship with God in that direct sense, right? So at the bottom it says here, this is my thought. This key concept differs from our own experience, our cultural river, right? The mutual concerns of religious ritual and legal systems. Both strove for order, both held chaos at bay. Again, there are in the United States and in Europe, there are folks that would like us to be kind of like a theocracy and let religious theology drive law. But that's not the same thing that we're talking about here, right? This is much more than that because the religious rituals, right? No Christian nationalist, and of course I've written many things about the danger of Christian nationalism and the fact that it's the opposite of what Jesus has commanded us to do. Set that aside. The religious rituals, right? Baptism, communion, all of the things that we do, our worship and our prayer, they are not connected to the legal system. And they're also not doing the same thing. Or even the Christian nationalists aren't trying to bring that part of religious life. They're trying to bring the morality, not the ritual. So again, it's different. They had a different cultural river. They thought about these things in a very different way than we do today. And so when we're reading Torah and we see legal things and we see ritual things, and they're overlapping, they're interrelated. There's a lot of connection there, and that's something to be aware of when we are interpreting and applying and understanding the text. Interpreting, understanding, applying the text. So if the legal wisdom was not followed, society collapsed under the weight of injustice, resulting in anarchy and the neglect of the gods. If the ritual wisdom was not followed, angry gods would turn away from the people, causing them to suffer all sorts of consequences. Okay, so both are doing the same thing. Justice, legal issues, wisdom, they are trying to keep society on the up and up, keep chaos out, keep order in so that the gods can be cared for and the people can be blessed by the gods. And then the ritual is right. So that first part is so that human society doesn't fall apart. The second part, the ritual, is so that the gods don't pull back. Don't say, well, this isn't worth it because these people aren't doing the ritual right. Even though it's a symbiotic relationship, they could still be angry if it wasn't done right. So, and I think this is our last slide. Divine favor was always the objective. Both justice and ritual were time-honored means for gaining that favor, and wisdom was at the foundation of both sets of practices. Again, it's not about laws, it's not about rules, it's about wisdom. What works, what we have done before, what the traditions are, right? That's how you determined justice and the proper ritual. Again, they're both being decided not by consulting books, but by understanding the situation, by looking at precedent and saying, well, that didn't work before. And so, and again, you're using wisdom to figure these things out. Both are trying to achieve the same goal, divine favor, a good relationship with the god or the gods or the pantheon of gods or whatever it might be. Because, again, you want that. They believed you needed that because that's how the world worked, right? The rain would come when the gods were happy. The pests and the pestilences would be kept away when the gods were happy. That was understood and acknowledged by everybody. And so they took these things very seriously, and both the legal things and the ritualistic things hand in hand, trying to achieve the same goal. Yep, so that was our last slide. So that's a fairly brief one. It's pretty straightforward, right? It's a symbiotic relationship, and we're talking about a lot of overlap, a lot of interconnectedness between legal ideas and religious ritual ideas, because both are trying to please the gods, both are trying to keep society ordered and well-functioning in order to make that work. So, all right, we'll pick it up there next time and talk about, okay, what's different in ritual in Torah from this? It's not this, so how is it different? We'll the next time I'll lay that case out. All right, thank you.